G'day and welcome to Insights and Storytellings with me, Moon Willow. It is a real honour and privilege to have you with me as I go into stories and try and make sense of the world around us, I guess. And it's a bizarre old world we're living in at the moment. Not least the recent time of putting up, well, trying to upload recent videos. I've had a weird week with it all, really, as you may have sort of already picked up. The last one that I actually uploaded, which was around the heart, and really exploring how dark I was experiencing the world. And I don't know whether sort of like initially the sound was on all the way through, or whether and then it for some reason disappeared, or it had disappeared from the get-go. I honestly don't know. And that was on that day, that was the third time I had attempted to record and upload. And the day before, I think I'd tried about 4 or 5 times before I had to go to work. And for the past 2 days, I've really been catching up on my sleep and having a bit of downtime. And I'm not entirely sure today whether this is going to record, if it records, whether the sound's going to go through. I really don't know. And the weekend I found incredibly difficult. And then sort of someone sent through to me the Schumann resonance, and there was a huge spike with the energies around our planet, and there was no discernible reason. Normally that picks up sunspot activity, or comets coming close to, and asteroids coming close to our biosphere, and none of that was actually being picked up anywhere. And then today I've read somewhere that a black hole that scientists have been aware of suddenly doesn't exist anymore. So there's some really weird stuff going off out there, not least the world we're actually living on at the moment, and the fear narrative being really pushed at the moment, especially where I'm living in the United Kingdom. And that I find is quite difficult to navigate. And I tend to be quite an optimistic person, so to really struggle to make sense of what's going off, and keeping my vibrations high, and trying to see a lighter way through has been quite difficult. And I guess the reason why I'm mentioning all of this is that I suspect I'm not alone with these different experiences and different feelings, sort of like increase in headaches, increase in tiredness, sluggishness, and a difficulty in progressing forwards. So that's why I bring it up, really. Although today I've managed to do things that help help me sort of re-establish that higher vibration and interconnectedness with things larger than the fear narrative, I guess. And one of those things for me, and I think I've mentioned it time and time again, is just having a walk around my local reserve. And I ended up synchronistically choosing a time where the sun was going down and the colours were absolutely glorious. And I had a robin sing to me on the way round as well, and just feeling really connected to the world and earth and source as I went around. So that really helped me feel lighter. But I get this, as I say, I don't think I'm alone in this, that it is, it's almost this oppressive feeling going around at the moment, and I do believe some of that has to do with the current narrative. And I have this frustration of when will it all end? When are we going to be able to see the truth with more clarity? But I know that that's my truth and not necessarily other people's. But I'm finding it very difficult to navigate at the moment and not get caught into that fear and getting lost in that oppressive feeling, and equally not trying not to step into annoyance, anger, frustration that so many people seem to be buying into the larger narrative, and I struggle with that, and I know that that's sort of heightened by the type of job that I do as well. So I feel like I've got a double whammy going off at the moment. So on that note, I'm going to see which crystal sort of comes out for us today. So if you, as per usual, focus on the purple crystal bag for me. Oh, okay, that one stayed in. So I've got solidite, so for our throat chakra. And I think that's really pertinent at the moment. I've noticed that my internal narrative, my internal thought process has been more negative, sort of. I don't know. There is a lot around our throats at the moment, and there is a lot of, if we look at the mainstream narrative, it's very much about keeping us stum, not being able to freely communicate with other people, that it's very hard to express our truth across the board without fear of retaliation, of being closed down, of being shut down. We're not being encouraged at the moment to go into a dialogue, to express a difference of opinion, to try and look at things from an alternate perspective, and that can be painful and increasingly difficult. And it's only through exploring ideas, I find, that we can actually truly understand our own authentic truth. And that does have a huge impact So it has a huge impact on our different levels of health. And if we're feeling like we're not being heard, that can shut us down even further, but it can also take us back into old narratives that we used to have, and going back into not being worthy of, feeling like what's the point, and they can be quite insidious. Yeah, that works. You know what I mean. Hopefully. And it's, I don't know, I'm finding it a real struggle to speak myself at the moment. And it's almost like if you're bombarded with negativity of oppression, that it's almost easier to cave. It's almost easier not to speak against what you're hearing, even though it doesn't resonate for you. And that can produce sort of like a cognitive dissonance as well. And I don't know truly what I'm trying to say, which is quite paradoxical, considering it is the throat chakra that's wanting to be heard. So within that, I'm going to see what cards sort of come up as well, and see if that helps clear my mind and my voice. Let's see where we go with it. So we've got the stork and the lily and the fox. So with the stork, from the 21st of December, there was that shift and increase in frequency and light, and that's still with us. I can see sort of even on overcast days that the light is still a lot brighter, and there's sort of the Schumann resonance sort of backs that up, really, that there is more higher frequencies sort of hitting the earth at the moment, and we're on a new path, and we are now in the age of Aquarius, and that's the matriarchy, so the emotions are flowing more freely and are a lot more heightened. But so within the throat chakra, we are able to speak in the world that we want. We are the ones that are in control of our world. And I think that becomes more frustrating in knowing that, and then trying to work out how to hold that as we walk through our lives on a day-to-day basis, especially if we're having to participate in the third dimension and day-to-day life that is, as I say, constantly coming up with more and more restrictions. So it's trying to hold our sense of reality, hold our own story, and bring that into fruition and bring that into reality. So I think that's what the stork's about at the moment, and doing it in a conscious way as well. So it isn't just a knee-jerk reaction to what's going off around us, but it is actually considered and heartfelt, so that what we're speaking into being is truly what we want brought into this world, and the world that we're walking through, and the world that we're the way that we're walking. So going into the next card, which is the lily, and in this particular instance it's health, and with that oppressive feeling, so that increase in restrictions, etc., it's a lot easier to fall into ill health, because it's more difficult to reach out. A lot of us need that physical contact, and having those spaces taken away from us where we generally meet people and see people and connect, that can have a huge impact on us on a psychological and emotional level. So it's really important to look after ourselves on a physiological level, so that doesn't really slip, because I find for myself, if I'm feeling lower in mood, I tend to reach for unhealthy food, chocolates and stuff like that, and that can have an impact on my physical health. Helps me put weight on, makes it more difficult to move, and then sort of that can get into that internal rhetoric of you've done that again, you know that's not healthy, why are you stuffing your mouth? And a lot of that is because and especially around the throat chakra, which is where this story is coming from, if we're not able to vocalize and voice what's going off, we invariably block our throat chakra, our voice, by food. And that can, as I say, if we end up having too much of certain products, it can actually weaken our throats, can increase the production of mucus, can put our adrenal systems at risk. I'll get there in a minute. So, but it can really have that impact, and then we can end up starting coughing, and then people will think that we've got the virus, and that makes it even more difficult and problematic. So there's a lot of circles and a lot of interconnectedness with it as well. And within the adrenals, it's exhaustion. And it's really exhausting. I'm finding it really exhausting, holding my light, my truth, in a world that seems to have gone completely insane, from my perspective. And that the more tired you get, the more exhausted, and then your choices are not particularly healthy, and that puts your immune system and your physical health, that can compromise that, and then that can have an impact on your emotional health and your spiritual health. So it's really important at the moment to find that space for you. Where is it that you feel most nurtured? Where do you feel most connected? Remembering to reach out to other people, like-minded people, that you can explore different topics with. Really feeling that connection with earth underneath, really rooting, and remembering to root into earth independently. Remembering not to make how you feel reliant on somebody else, that you can actually find your health and happiness and well-being independently of whatever's going off around you. And I recognize that that's not as easy as I'm making it out to be, because I know from my own journey over the past few days that it has been really difficult to find that internal equilibrium and really feel connected to earth underneath, and feel like that I am on that right path and moving in the way that I'm meant to be moving. So that has that incredible linkage into how I feel on all those levels. So it's very much going back into the stalk. It is a new way of being, but I think there was a high expectation that it was going to be plain sailing, and clearly it isn't. And I know that I did talk about before Christmas and before the 21st of December that there will be almost like a kickback from the other side, as it were, where there's like the increase in the fear, increase in the anxiety, increase in the isolation, and how to navigate that. And even though I spoke about it, I feel like I've been caught with my pants down, as it were. I anticipated there being sort of like an oppressive feel, but I hadn't anticipated the depth and the expression of it coming in. So that's sort of like part of it for me, really. And I know the things that help lift me out of that, and that's what I've been working on for myself, and that's been the walking around the reserve, getting more sleep, really connecting with the birds outside, and recognizing that although I live alone, I'm not alone, that there is a lot out there. And it's been simple things as well for me. It's like just washing my hair. That makes a huge difference for me. It's self-care and nurturing on all levels. So I think that's something that we all need to try and bring into a daily practice for ourselves, is really having that space and time that is about nurturing ourselves on a physical, emotional, soulful, spiritual level. So, and then that brings me into, I'm not entirely sure how, but we'll have a feel, is the fox. And the reason why I'm smiling is because last night, as I was in bed meditating, I could hear this sound coming from the street that I live on. And I had a clue, and I thought, I know who that is. And so I got up, I stopped meditating, I got up and had a look out of my window, and sure enough, there was one of the foxes that lives locally to me on the street calling out, I'm guessing for his den mates. And that just really lifted me. As much as meditating does help, I find that actually having that connection with the other inhabitants of Earth, whether that be the birds or the dogs, but in this case the fox, that just really lifted me more than meditating would have done, because I could feel that wonderful connection with the other inhabitants on this planet. And the fox, more often than not, is about being sly and cunning within this deck. But I think as well it's calling out what came for me last night with seeing and hearing the fox on the street, was calling out to his family. And from that I really take at the moment calling out to each one of us and really recognizing that we're not alone, that we are together in trying to figure out our way through this. And sometimes that does mean being cunning, and recognizing that in some situations it's better not to say anything and walk away as opposed to engaging, because we can end up stepping into that emotion of frustration, annoyance, anger, because someone's holding onto a narrative that I can't fathom, and that's just, as I say, that's where I live, and it's not getting pulled into a dialogue that will have no end and no meeting point. That often we end up in conversations with people where we're diametrically opposed to each other's viewpoint, and there is very little meeting in between, and that polarization can create a further split especially if we try and force our viewpoint onto them, or they try to force their viewpoint onto us, and that can just escalate into sort of a darker oppressive reaction, really. So at those moments, it's actually better to be more sly, recognizing where our den mates are, our soul family are, and walking away from those interactions, but then going and speaking about it elsewhere, so that it's not blocked and not cut off, so that we don't end up using unhealthy coping mechanisms around that, but utilizing more healthy ones. And even if that's going outside muttering to the stars, or writing in a journal, or just putting out to somebody that that you met resistance earlier on in the day and you found that a struggle, but actually acknowledging and communicating how that made you feel, as opposed to trying to squash it down and blocking it, because that's when ill health can come in. So it's not being cunning and sly as such, it's just choosing the moments and the space with which to vocalize and give your throat chakra free rein. But also noticing, sort of within those situations, we can sometimes end up having the underlying dialogue of why did I cave? Why didn't I say anything? I'm useless, and that can invariably come up. So being aware of that and letting that go, just recognizing that some situations, no matter how much you speak your truth, that's just not going to be heard. It'll just be met with resistance, and actually that can be more damaging. And actually sometimes it's better just to walk away. And it's more a case of just working out how to live our lives in a authentic manner and at that higher frequency. And hopefully that will be noted by other people, and they'll be curious enough to ask. And at that moment, that's when a clearer and more honest dialogue will come in, I believe. So, yeah, I think that's all of it at the moment. I think the other side for me at the minute as well is I think there is quite a lot of cognitive dissonance going off at the moment, because more things are coming to the surface, and I was expecting that as well. But there's sometimes we'll get information through that, although in our heart of hearts we trust is real and trust is true, but our minds are just going, I just can't compute that I can't wrap my head around it. And it's sort of trying to figure out how that can actually coexist within us as well, without getting pulled under by that riptide that I've been talking about recently, and actually figuring out actually how to maintain our light and how to maintain a higher vibration and hope, and that connectiveness with each other and earth around us and all that are walking on her. So yeah, I think that's all for today. I am going to see what sound comes through for us tonight within this. Thank you very much for joining me. I am hoping several things: that the sound has recorded all the way through, that this video has recorded all the way through, and I'm hoping that I will be back tomorrow. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. Love you all. Bye for now.